Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we get started, I want to ask you if you volunteer with the youth or you help, please stand up. Don't be shy. There's a bunch of you. Why don't you look around? Let's give these people a round of applause. These guys make it possible for what we do. And Tammy and I are so blessed to be a part of this ministry, a part of this church. God's doing such amazing things. And, sometimes it's easy to kind of get isolated on the island back there, And so when this Sunday came about, began to talk with the youth, and they were so excited because they were going to be able to tell you about something that happened at our fall retreat. And you'll see that I had no shortage of finding people that wanted to get up here and talk because God did some amazing things. And so they wanted to share. So I'm going to ask these guys a question apiece. I know they want to say a whole lot more, but for time restraints, we're going to just ask them a question. And then we have a few more people that are going to come up and give their testimony, and then we will begin the rest of the message. But, I guess we'll start with Tyler. Tyler, what was your experience at fall retreat? Yeah, come up here so they can hear you.
Well, my experience was, at most places you go, well, it's been a while for me to go. It's been like 3 years, but for most places, when you're in the line, you don't hear yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am. But that's what I heard the whole time. Yes, ma'am, this. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I mean, that's what I heard.
Okay. Did you meet any new friends or while you were there? Or?
Met some other people from a different church.
Okay.
Lost in basketball every single time.
What did you learn from this retreat, Tyler?
I learned in life that there's walls, and those walls that you're going to have to break them down.
Wow. Yeah, they separate you from God,
yes.
Don't they? Thank you, Tyler. All right, Abby. Thank you, Dan. All right, how about you, Abby? I know that you were excited about getting to go. Did you make some new friends there this weekend?
I did. I didn't expect that I would because I wanted to stay close to my friends, and when around certain people, I'm a very intuitive person. I guess that's the word. But I don't like expanding my friend group. Introverted.
Okay.
I don't like expanding my friend group, so I like.
So you were kind of surprised at how I'm saying I was surprised because I'll be honest, Abby was like, I don't want to be with those other kids. I don't want to sleep in this cabin. But before it was over, she could not stop talking. They were best friends, and it was cool to see her come out of her shell, see her come out of her comfort zone, and that was a lot about what this weekend was about. Okay, Celine, the final question: where did you see Jesus this weekend?
Well, I think that anybody that went can say that they saw Jesus on Saturday night when we broke down that wall and when everything that we had written down on those pieces of paper was written in charcoal on that wall. It made a big impact. And I saw Jesus in the way that people were interacting with the other people that were upset or were breaking down and just in that community.
Yeah. Well, you're right. That was one thing that really blew Tammy and I away is that these kids really opened up. They literally allowed God to break the walls down. And, I mean, there was a lot of crying and hugging, and they were praying with each other. They gave a lot of opportunities for us to pray with them. And it was amazing to see God work. Well, I have 3 more people that are going to come up and give their testimony. So if y'all will come have a seat, we're going to ask Lisa to come up, and we will continue with the service.
So about a week ago, I was asked if I would come give my testimony, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to say. I didn't know what I needed to say. So Scott, and with all of his wisdom, the first thing he told me was, all you need to say is, I am an awesome youth minister. You're welcome. Well, we do have a great youth minister, but that's not what I'm here to tell you about. This weekend was really the best weekend, like the best retreat I've ever been on. And I know that sounds a little cliche, and that's what you expect me to say, but that's the best way I know how to say it. A different church, the Pavilion Church, went with us. Really glad they came. They were a great church. But we talked about internal and external walls. External walls being something like a house. They keep you safe from the outside world. Internal walls being kind of the same nature. We feel like they keep us safe from the outside world, but really they're just hiding what we don't want to share. And they can keep you from getting closer to other people, getting closer to God, and they can cause you to struggle with yourself, even sometimes hate yourself. And so we talked about breaking down those walls and how to do it. And on the last night, after Scott's Devo, he asked us to write down on a piece of paper all like our internal walls and put them in a bucket. And so we did, and we went back up to the mess hall, and we were just chilling, talking, and we came back down to the pavilion, and this wall, kind of like the one you see up here, that they had been building out of cinder blocks all week, had a tarp over it. And when they took the tarp off, all of our internal walls were on it. And it was kind of amazing to see the things that were up there and the things that people struggle with. So we all stood up and we walked around that wall 7 times. At first in a single file line, one of the girls from the Pavilion Church brought a guitar, so she was playing and we were singing. But as we walked around, we started to double up, and you saw people being there for each other and listening to each other and walking together around this wall. And we went and sat down, and they brought out a sledgehammer, and they knocked the wall down, and they split it in half, all the rubble. And they put a communion table at the back of this rubble, and you had to walk through the rubble to take communion. You had to walk through what was holding you back to get to Jesus. And it was probably the most impactful thing. Thank you.
When I first heard about the retreat, I wasn't too excited about going. I was kind of forced by my parents to go, and there weren't a lot of girls my age, so I actually stayed in a cabin with girls, I think that were like 12 or 13, and it actually turned out to be a great experience. And one of the most memorable things was the night that he took the tarp off of the wall that we had been building all week, or all weekend, with the words that we're building up our internal walls, and you just see your word, and it's just so powerful because so many people have that same word that's holding them back too. And so the youth minister, Clay, told us to march around 7 times just like Jericho. And everybody was thinking this guy was crazy, like what's gonna happen, like crazier than Scott. And he brings out a sledgehammer and just goes to town on that wall. And it was just powerful. And I'm not a person likes to share and pray with somebody about whatever is going on, but I immediately went to Miss Tammy and I just broke down because it was so easy for him to take that sledgehammer and just tear down the wall when it's been so hard. And so I'm very thankful that I got to go to the retreat, and blessed that I got to be there with a lot of the kids in the youth group.
About 3 weeks ago, I went on the fall retreat. This has been the first retreat I'd ever been on, and it was about breaking down the walls. We have internal walls and external walls. External walls help us and protect us, but internal walls break us down and completely destroy us. So, I think the most powerful moment and where I saw Jesus the most is when they split up the boys and the girls, because I heard some personal stories from both Scott and the other minister from the Pavilion Church, and it was just really powerful talking about, you know, their walls and their struggles and everything that they've been through. And I could kind of relate to that. I've been through some struggles in the past, but I've gotten over that after going to the retreat and breaking down my walls. So I really like the part where we broke down the wall with the sledgehammer and then had communion after, and everybody started to pray together, and we had people go on their knees, start singing. We had a person playing guitar, and yeah, it was just really fun going there and having that experience.
With God. I mean, like we talked about, like Lisa said, there's internal walls and external walls. Not all walls are bad, but those internal walls are bad, and you have to identify them and see if they are harming your relationship with God. And if they are, you need to take them down. Are your walls breaking God's commandments? I mean, if they're keeping you from living your life with the full relationship with God, then they're harming you. You have to bring them down before they ruin your life. Let's see. The first step in taking care of your walls, you have to go through a series of steps. And if you don't do one, then you're not going to be able to do the others, and your wall's just going to stay there. The first step is admitting you have a problem. If you can't even see that you have a problem, then you're not going to make any effort to change. You have to identify your problem and admit that it is ruining your life. Admitting your problem is destroying you and your relationships. Proverbs 18:1 says, "Unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense." That's true. You'll get to a point where your walls and your addictions keep you from your relationships with other people and also with God. You'll start wanting those other things more than even your family members, your loved ones, more than God. So you need to identify those and realize that they are turning you into not a good person. Next, you have to admit you can change. Everyone can change. Everyone has the potential to change. We're not stuck where we are. Anyone has the chance to change, no matter how big your problem is, no matter how long you've been struggling with your problem. And then the final step in identifying your wall is admitting you want to change. If you don't want to change, then it does no good knowing that you can change. It's hard enough changing when you want to change to break those habits, but when you don't want to change, then your chances of changing are next to nothing. You need to want to change to be able to change. I mean, most of the time, as people, we hold things up. Does this particular thing benefit me more than it hurts me? And a lot of times it's hard to see how much it really is hurting you versus how much you actually like it. So which is a very, very important next step, which comes down to breaking down the walls, is getting a support group that can actually help you identify what your problem is. You'll be a little biased towards if it's really hurting you or not, but other people will tell you how they see it, which can be a very big help. You need to find the right people to support you. A lot of the times, myself included, I want to go to my best friends for help whenever I'm having trouble. That's great, but sometimes your best friends might have the same struggle you do, and you need to find someone who doesn't have that struggle, who can hold you accountable so that you don't go back to your old ways. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, "Two people are better than one, for they can help each other succeed. For if one falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble." Next is staying away from the temptation and people who tempt you to go back. I mean, it's common sense that if you're trying to quit something, that you don't want to be flashing it in front of your face all the time. For instance, an alcoholic, if you're trying to quit drinking, you shouldn't go walking in front of going into all these bars and walking past the beer aisle in the grocery store, and you just need to stay away from that. Same thing with people. It's a lot easier to say no to objects than it is to people. It'll be a lot easier to stay away from that bottle of beer than it is to stay, if your friends are going out drinking, just saying, maybe I shouldn't this time. Maybe we can go hang out and do something else instead of go out and drink. Maybe go get dinner or something. But you need to just stay away from things like that when you're going through change. And then lastly, your faith and obedience in God is what is key to breaking down your walls. For Jericho, for example, how do you think all of the people felt when they were told that they had to march around the city and sing to break the walls down? It's crazy. They had their swords, shields, they were all ready for battle, but then they were told that they need to march around the city singing, and that would bring the walls down. I'd imagine that there were a few people, if not most, who were saying that, this is crazy. But in the end, because of faith and obedience in God, the walls came down, and so can yours. Hebrews 13:6 says, "So we can say with confidence, 'The Lord is my helper, so I will have no fear. What can mere people do to me?'" God can help all of us break down our walls. Thank you.
I think several of them brought up the wall. I don't know if you could see that wall on that video, or I don't know if you could see what the words and the things that are on that wall. It was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking to think that these amazing kids struggle with these kind of things. It broke my heart. And I believe that that's why we as a church, you grandparents, you parents, youth leaders, it takes all of us to support and love and guide these young people. so they can overcome the things that they're faced with. I don't know, but I don't know if you noticed that the brick that said perfect with the communion table. I just got one quick story. I know we're long, but when they wrote down, somebody wrote one of their walls where they were imperfect. Well, when we started beating the wall down, there was one block. There was about a half a block, and it was kind of setting upside down and off to the corner. And nobody even realized it at first. And as we began to line up and walk through the rubble to take communion, somebody said, "Look at that block. It says perfect." I got cold chills right now. We picked this block up, and it said perfect. And we set it on the table where we took communion. Because it doesn't matter what you're going through. It don't matter what you're faced with. Jesus can make it perfect. You know, I think that we also identified that it's easy to become wall builders. We're all faced with these things. When things don't go right, when things get tough, we begin to build walls. Well, today, we want to tell you that you don't have to have these walls anymore. If you want to break these walls down, if you want to live free like Jesus wanted us to, why he came and died for us, here's your chance. Here's your chance. Maybe you've been a Christian a long time, but you've been imprisoned by the walls that you've built up, and you want to be free. Maybe you want to make Jesus your Lord and Savior. Well, this morning, if we can do anything or pray with you or baptize you, please come forward as we stand and sing.
Come, ye sinners.